Hello and welcome to episode 28 of Webflail, the podcast dedicated to uncovering the greatest failures behind the greatest webflowers, because success often comes after learning from many failures. I'm your host, Jack, a failure connoisseur, and today my guest is Dumeme Nbisi, but I'm going to refer to his nickname Dumeme throughout the interview. I probably butchered his name, I'm sorry. He is a product brand identity designer and a web designer based in Lagos, Nigeria. And I came across his portfolio website, which is why he's on the show today, because it's full of animation, it's full of interactions and playful visuals. And I feel like it was a very different portfolio than what I've seen previously. So I wanted to get him on. He has worked in various industries from sport, music, social media, over 8 years of doing creative work. And on his website, he writes, "My mission is to build sustainable design frameworks which create positive cultural shifts and create the ideal product that users will love. Ultimately, I want to leave a positive impact on the world through art and design." Dumeme, welcome to the Webflow podcast.
Hi Jack, thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here and talk about the stuff we all love.
Yeah, talk about the heavy shit. Talk about the heaviness of being a freelancer. Yeah. Now I'm kind of intrigued. So when I was looking at the stats for the Webflail podcast, 2% of my listens come from Nigeria, and they actually come from Lagos. I don't know. Have you ever listened to any podcast episodes? Any of the Webflow podcast episodes?
um yeah, I have actually, took my time to listen to a couple of episodes when you reached out to me. Um yeah, that's not surprising at all because you know Nigeria was really popping off. The design space is really popping off. In the last 2 to 3 years, there are a lot of amazing emerging designers. From brand identity to UI UX to web design. People are just going crazy in the space right now, and it's lovely to see. So, you know, having any sort of platform that kind of elevates design would definitely reach people here because what we have this tenacity to learn and to like build and do great things. So that's not surprising to me at all that you have an audience here. It's just how things are now.
Yeah, it's epic to. I was like looking at the stats. I was like, oh my god, like people in Nigeria listening to Webflow. It's epic. But yeah, and it's awesome to hear that you've actually been a listener as well. I'm glad that you didn't listen to the podcast and thought, oh my god, I'm not going on that after I invited you on. So thanks for coming on. But so I've been stalking you online, and you are a bit of
Oh,
a
really?
yeah, a little bit creepy, I know. You're a bit of a Swiss Army penknife. You've got so many different creative skills, and what I want to do is just ask you straight up how you knew that you wanted to be a creative and how you learned all these different creative disciplines from video editing to web design to product design. Talk to us about that.
Okay. Oh, I think this question kind of takes me back, to when I was much younger. So I've always been creative from a very young age. If you ask my family, they'll tell you I was notorious for just locking myself in a room, just building stuff, with like sellotapes and like the Frosties box or something, So I've always had that creative touch, from when I was young, and I guess the people around me would tell you that I was always destined to do great things in design or with art. So primarily I'm an artist. I'm a visual artist. Also dabble in other disciplines in art related. And it wasn't until I was about to leave high school that I really dabbled into design. So I remember it was a friend of mine, he's also my business partner. So he was a musician and he wanted to, you know he needed an artwork for his single that was about to drop, and he was like, "Oh, you do this cool art stuff. Why not try design? You could design something for me for my album cover." And I was like, "I don't know about that, but I'll give it a try." So I just played around in Photoshop a bit. Oh no, it wasn't. I think I played around in GIMP at the time, and the Paint app that comes with every Windows PC. I think that was my first proper design tool. So I played around with that, and I was able to come up with something. And then he was like, "Oh, this is really cool." I was. It was a thing like back then. Like people like, "Oh, I didn't know you designed too," and I was like, I just one of the skills I just decided to pick up. So really since then I really decided to dabble in design and kind of like teach myself the different tools that we had at the time. I remember I was also interested in doing some animation stuff as well. So if you dig deep into YouTube, you find my YouTube channel, you'd see I did an animation almost 10, 11 years ago, where it was for an animated music video for a friend of mine, and we did that completely in Photoshop, and we literally rotoscoped each frame for the music video, and I edited all of that, like putting all the frames together in was it Sony Vegas at the time. So really old and archaic tools, but then that's what I pretty much used to learn, and that's what I was able to build on over the years and kind of get to where I am now. And an interest in all these different um sort of industries in the design space kind of came from just experimenting and wanting to try different things. So like with video stuff, I'll just watch music videos, see how the videos are cut, play around with different effects, just trying to I just wanted to create cool shit, I just wanted to kind of explore my creative abilities. And really from there I just decided to learn stuff like After Effects, Final Cut Pro. That's what I use now as my primary editor tool. And just kind of build on that. And over the years I just it's kind of crazy because I don't really do a good job at promoting myself. So it was kind of like my work speaking for me. So I wouldn't necessarily go, "Hey, oh, I need some clients." The clients would most likely just come to me because of something I probably did for someone in the past. So I was getting referrals through, friends of mine, people I've never heard of or spoken to before. And that kind of like created that pipeline for me in terms of like my clients. And it was really just a word of mouth kind of thing. And I was able to build on that throughout the years, up until now, where I decided to do a complete pivot into web design. And it's a really interesting story that we're going to get into how that happened. And yeah, but that's pretty much a summarized version of my design journey.
Awesome. So, I mean, you kind of started off as more like thinking of an art as an artist, and
Hmm.
then you've transitioned those like artistic skills into more, I guess, like product design focus,
Oh
and
shit!
then
I guess my pizza is here.
hey, go get your pizza. Go get your pizza.
All right, just give me a sec.
Yeah, of course. I'm gonna check out your YouTube.
I'm back.
Oh, great. You've had some pizza? You're feeling better?
Nah, I'd save that for later.
Oh no! I mean, if you're hungry, have some pizza before we carry on. I don't want you to think about pizza the whole.
Nah, it's nah, it's fine.
All right. Okay. Um. So
I hope you haven't lost your train of thought.
no. It's all good. Um.
All right.
So you basically started off thinking as an artist, and then you realized that design was even an option, and then you basically kind of followed your nose through design to product design, and now eventually making websites with Webflow and Framer. Is that right?
Yeah, pretty much. That pretty much sums it up.
And so when did, because I see on your LinkedIn that you went to University of Brighton International College. So
Hmm.
you learned tricks of the trade in England and lived in England for a bit. Is that how it worked?
Yeah, I spent about a year in England. Went to art school. Um, kind of learned some stuff. I wouldn't say I learned everything there. I just pretty much learned kind of like a wide spectrum of different art disciplines, in like a condensed 1 year program. So that's what that was. It wasn't anything too robust, but it was definitely a great experience, living in Brighton, meeting people from all around the world, So yeah, that's pretty much what that was.
That's awesome. And can you tell me and the listeners anything about the design scene in Nigeria? Because you started off saying that it's popping off. Like,
Oh man.
can you give us some flavor of what it's like, and maybe if there's any designers or web flowers that you think people should know about? Because I'd love to know more about that.
um Yeah, it's really interesting the way design has, really grown here in Nigeria. And it's not just Lagos. I mean, when people hear Nigeria, they just think about, oh, it's Lagos. I mean, Lagos is the capital, but it's the, business capital. Um, but it's people from different parts of, the country, even parts that aren't as developed as Lagos. People are still hustling and striving, to kind of get their foot in the door in the tech space. So it's really amazing to see. I've seen so many, like even every day, like it keeps blowing my mind, the level of talent we have, and I'm not as involved in the community as I would like to be. I'm definitely, planning on improving on that this year and getting more involved in like, community led events and stuff like that, outreach, and what's that thing called? I think it's called open source. Yeah, I really want to work on, open source projects with other designers. Um, I know some webflows as well. Not personally. I've seen their work, across my on Twitter, Instagram, and it's amazing to see what people are able to do with you know the limited you know internet power supply we have, but people keep pushing through. Like the tenacity is just amazing to see. So it's really amazing to see how the tech space and the design space in Nigeria is growing, and it's only getting better. We're just getting more people on board, people getting interested in design, and having and opening up many doors for other Nigerians as well. So like me, for instance, like when we get into certain positions, we're able to pull people along with us as well, and expose them to other opportunities like they ordinarily wouldn't get. So that's pretty much what I want to work on this year. I want to put as many people on as possible, and try and get more involved in the communities as much as possible.
Yeah, I mean, coming on from what you just said, if there are people that are doing amazing work that the Webflow community should know about and don't maybe, then
Hmm.
please do let me know, and I'll see. Maybe we can do a podcast episode with them, because I think they're in the Twitter sphere.
Hmm.
There is uh, maybe it's just because I'm white. I'm from England. I follow English speaking people that are white as well,
Mhm.
maybe, and there's definitely a blind spot there. So that's something that I really want to improve for this year for the WebFlow podcast. So yeah, I'll follow up with that after the episode.
Oh yeah, you definitely should.
Okay, awesome. And then speaking of Nigeria, then I mean, how has Nigerian culture like influenced your design style? Because, like I said in the intro, your portfolio is very different to, you know, a lot of portfolios that I've seen. There's a lot of animation. It's quite playful. There's like splashes of color. And can you tell us a little bit about like how your culture has like influenced your design style a bit?
Yeah, I mean, now that you mention it, it kind of takes me back to, you know, like thinking about it. It actually has had an influence on the way I think about design. So I've pretty much lived in Lagos pretty much all my life. Um, so taking some of those experiences and trying to like, because the way I see it, or the way my kind of workflow works right now, is kind of fusing my artistic side with my design side. I think that's kind of like the balance I've been able to find. And you know, I would use elements from, you know, my arts. I'd try and see how I can incorporate that into design. I'd use elements from my video editing and see how I can put that, you know, kind of like blend everything together. And you know, I'd say, you know, we're a very vibrant people. You know, the culture here is amazing. You know, oh yeah, that's what I was talking about.
Okay, that
Yeah,
that is the power supply.
yeah.
Does
So
that how
just
often does that happen? Just to give like how do you
um
work? How do you work if this happens consistently? What happens?
so the thing is, it depends on the area you're kind of in. I'm in an area that, you know, it's much better than, you know, a lot of areas. I think in the past week it's been quite bad. It usually isn't like this. Like normally I wouldn't even think about it in, you know, in the area I'm in. But you know, there are certain places that, you know, it's yeah, it's really it's really not great.
Oh, it's good.
Um
Do you need to do
yes.
anything, or should we carry on? Sorry, I'm kind of asking you questions, but you might be like, Jack, I actually need to get up and do something.
Yeah, yeah. Just give me a sec. Let me turn on the generator.
Yeah, sure, sure.
All right. So the power's back.
Epic. That's great to hear.
Yeah.
You have to
Not the
like.
generator, the actual power.
Okay, okay. So you
Yeah,
didn't
so
have the generator on.
yeah. So yeah, I mean, before we get back to what we were talking about, yeah, that happens. And you know, like I was saying, the area I'm in is quite good on a good day, you know, but it can be quite annoying, you know, stuff like this, you know, when we're having like a really important call with like a client, like a no nonsense client, and then that happens. It's a pain. But yeah, back to what I was saying, so we could probably cut from here.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I usually clap. Okay, yeah, no, we're not syncing anything, so we don't need to clap.
No, we're all good. We're all good.
Yeah. So yeah, like I was saying, we're a very vibrant people. Um, Lagos is a very colorful place. I think we have the yellow buses, the really popular yellow buses. So I think I kind of picked up on that color and kind of use it as my theme, so to speak. So I'd say that's one way, my environment has kind of influenced my design. So yeah, I think that's my color. I don't know why I picked it, but I just like it. Like, like everything around me is kind of like built on that. Like I have like these paintings on the walls. Yeah, so I do like paint as well. I haven't done a painting in so long. I'd really like to get back to that. So yeah, like these experiences, the environment, the people in different ways kind of shape me to the designer and artist that I am today.
It's really cool that the like yellow buses may have influenced that like yellow color that you've got on your website.
Hmm.
It's like a really vibrant color, and it definitely gives it like a kind of, yeah, quite a different feel. Like black, yellow, white is not like usual color combinations. So it's really, really interesting to see
Hmm.
that. So let's get into your failures now. Some fascinating.
Okay. Hmm.
We're gonna get into some meaty stuff here. So tell me about failure number one, then. Talking about the challenges faced in transitioning into web design and mistakes and failures you made along the way.
Hmm. To really it's a meaty one. Okay, I'd say, I don't want to like, how long does this podcast usually go?
You've got hours. No, it's normally an hour, but just
Okay, I can see
give
we're
me,
at the
give me a feel.
26-minute mark. Okay. Well, I think I'd say my transition kind of started proper probably mid last year into, web design. I was telling someone this story like recently, so it's kind of fresh in my head. Um I was reached out to by someone who was hiring for a UI UX product design role and asked if I knew anyone that was interested. Obviously, I'd been doing design like, from time, probably just, general graphic design. Had dabbled in some UX stuff for a company I worked at sometime in late 2021. So, you know, I had to think about it, couldn't come up with anyone, off the top of my head. And I was like, hold on, let me even, let me see what this stuff is, all about. And, did some research, you know, really got into Figma, learning how to design in Figma. I had some experience in Figma, but I just, kind of left it, when I really had no need for it anymore. So, um, did some research, got back to the person. I was like, yeah, I think I would like to apply for this role, even though I have no experience. And, got to the interview stage. Um, we were given an assignment, which is like a really, really annoying step or stage in a design interview, because I mean the portfolio should kind of speak for itself. But I decided to do the design challenge. I think a lot of people dropped off when they when they told us to do a design challenge, understandably so. And we're supposed to create this app where it's kind of like an education app, kind of teaching, you know it was basically, we're supposed to design an onboarding experience for an education app for students. And we had a week. I had no knowledge of how to do that, how to wireframe, how to create prototypes. I had zero experience knowing how to do all these things. But then something in me was just like, follow through, see how far you can go in this. And I decided to, just put my head down and just do the work. So it was probably one of the longest weeks of my entire life, trying to learning wireframing, learning, prototyping in Figma, learning how to use Figma in itself, because I'd never really like, dabbled in that. So as crazy as it sounds, I was able to get it done in a week. Obviously my experience as a designer working in the industry for, so many years was able to help me skip a lot of the learning process, because if you're using Figma, you probably have, it has similarities with a software I'm probably familiar with. So that kind of, sped up things. And, when we got to the next stage in the interview, and then I got the feedback that I didn't get the role. And then the feedback was that I was too experienced for the role, which did not make any sense whatsoever. So I think it was for a junior role. And then the guy was like that, oh, I'm too senior for this role. Because of like the work I presented to him, he felt like, oh yeah, this is like, a bit more advanced than what we were expecting. I don't know how to explain it. I don't know if it's making any sense, but that was the feedback I got. And it kind of took me back, and I was like, hold on, where do I go from here? So it really put me in a rough spot. And, you know, given the design challenge, I really, we didn't have to present a portfolio because at the time I didn't have a portfolio. And, obviously I needed a job as well. So not getting that role kind of put me back to square one, where I had to think, oh, okay, now I have to go back to the drawing board and I have to, see how I can navigate this space, because it piqued my interest, trying to, knowing about these things that I didn't know about, knowing about other opportunities and design, you know, besides graphic design and, doing the occasional poster here and there. Like there was this entire world I hadn't discovered in design. So it kind of piqued my interest. It was a funny thing when I was waiting for feedback on the interview on how that was going to go. I was casually, just browsing YouTube on my TV one night, and then an ad for Webflow came up, and you know, it was kind of showcasing all the different interactions and animations you could create. And then the catch was like, oh, this is no code. Like you don't need to have any experience to do all these things, knowing how to code. And I'm like, yeah, right, yeah, sure, yeah, I can do all these without knowing how to code. Yeah. So, I mean, I kind of just brushed it aside. But then when that happened, and then I knew I needed to create a portfolio if I wanted to keep job hunting, um, I decided to, give Webflow another look and see what it was all about. So at the time, I think I was already building my portfolio in Wix. It was rubbish. Like it never came out. I never posted it. It was complete rubbish because it was just, you know, extremely limiting. That's my problem with like the no code tools we had before, like the Squarespaces and the Wix and all of that. So that's why I kind of brushed no code to the side and decided to, just face, what I was already doing. So when I looked into Webflow, I decided, you know, oh, I've already finished building this in Wix and I have to build it entirely in Webflow again. So, that was a very jarring experience for me because I had absolutely no idea what I was doing in Webflow. And then the learning curve to learning Webflow was extremely steep. At the time, I was like, this is impossible. I'm not going to be able to do this in time, because I knew I needed a job. I was pressed for cash. It was, I could not afford to, spend all that time learning Webflow. And, I felt like if I just went ahead with what I had with Wix, I probably wouldn't get any leads, and, I'd be back to square one. So I was like, okay, throw that in the trash. Let's start again. So I decided to, go all in on Webflow and, learning how to create, amazing stuff. Because then I went down the rabbit hole of seeing what people could create with Webflow and, checking out resources like awards.com, seeing all the different amazing things people are able to do in Webflow. And then it took me back as well. I was like, okay, if I want to compete in this industry, these are the kind of people I'm going to be going up against. So in order to stand out, you have to, you have to really stand out. Your work has to speak for itself. That was what I was thinking to myself, because, from where I come from, it's not a very Like there's just so many strikes against you. I know some Nigerians are gonna hate me for saying this, but it's just so many strikes against you because it's the truth. You know, we don't have a really good reputation for, you know, in terms of trustworthiness. You know, people just think of, oh, when they think of Nigeria, they think of, oh, the Nigerian prince, or, you know, scammers and all of that. So we don't necessarily have that trust with like working with international clients. So you really, really, really have to sell yourself. You know, if you want to compete in the global sphere, that's the way I saw it. So that's why I really had to go all in and, you know, really dive into it and kind of learn, you know, all these things. So I mean, the Webflow University was so helpful. They have the most amazing tutorials, the best tutorials I've ever watched on any platform. You know, they're funny, they're insightful, and you actually learn stuff. So that was really helpful in trying to learn, you know, how to, you know, properly navigate the platform itself. And this was it was such a crazy journey because this took me, so I think from that, at that point, from when I decided to start learning Webflow, it took me about 8 months of just constant learning, making mistakes. It was crazy. I remember when I did my first draft, because I think the one you're seeing right now is probably like the 8th draft. So when I did the first draft, I was designing in Webflow itself, which was the first big mistake. You should absolutely not do that. It's gonna it's gonna do more harm than good. So I was doing that, and then I was designing on, I think, a different breakpoint. And then when I went back to check like the rest of the site, like nothing was, you know. So like there's so many things I didn't know at the time, you know, that I probably wish I knew then that I know now, you know. And like I had to make all those mistakes before getting to where I am right now. And you know, it was such a crazy journey because it was like it took a lot of tenacity. It took a lot of not wanting to give up, because there were so many times I wanted to give up. I was like, this is taking forever. This is not where I want it to be. This is not how I want it to look, you know. So after that first draft, I decided, oh, okay, I think I need to go back to the drawing board. I need to actually design this first and then build, you know. So like that's when I knew. So I think like my first mistake, I'd say, is to not compromise on the steps taken in your design process. So because I wanted to get something done, you know, straight away, I just decided to skip like 3, 4 steps and go straight to the point, and then that kind of backfired, and I had to go back to square one. Do you know what I mean? So it was crazy navigating all of that and making all those mistakes to get to where it's at right now. So I know I've been talking for so long, but that's pretty much a summary of how it happened for me. And you know, yeah.
All right. Okay, so let me just say back to you some of the things that you said, because there was a lot of little nuggets there, and I think it's really important that we kind of just recap. So
Mm-hmm.
you needed to get a job and you
Mm-hmm.
were strapped for cash. So what you did is you tried to kind of skip the steps, as it were. You try to like jump the gun, even though Webflow was actually quite difficult. You were just like, I'm just going to make it. And then actually that
Mm-hmm.
made the process way longer in the long run. So
Mm-hmm.
what you're advising people to do is, if at all possible, take your time to actually learn how to do stuff and then
Mm-hmm.
apply that learning, rather than try and like just like slam a portfolio together. Because the
Mm-hmm.
other thing that you talked about is that you know, to get international clients, if there is oh, that was a bad time to cough. If there was you know, a trust you know, factor in there to get those international clients, if you aren't necessarily like well known in your industry and you don't have contacts, and maybe there is you know, stereotypes against where you're from, then it's really, really important that you have a portfolio that absolutely bangs, puts you
Mm-hmm.
apart from the competition.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe building on Wix is going to be kind of limiting. So that's hence why you've chosen Webflow, it sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
And if you were to give any advice to someone that's starting out in Nigeria, maybe, and it's
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, how the hell do I get clients? Now I've got a portfolio, I've done what you've said. How do I get clients? how did you go about getting clients, and what steps would you advise people to take from there?
Okay. I believe the internet's your best friend. So just put your work out there. That's what I did. I hate Twitter. I hate posting. I mean, I'm always on Twitter, but I don't post anything personal on there. I'm either just posting about a football match going on, or some really cool thing that I did. I barely posted my work on there, but after all that work, I'm like, yeah, there's no way I'm not posting this on Twitter. So I did that. I found a creative way to kind of do that. I decided to like create a video kind of showcasing the highlights of the website, and really intricate details, you know, on the portfolio page, and that really got a lot of leads. So I mean, it's a game of chance, because the tweet could, go under the rug, or it could pop off. You just put it out there and pray to the Twitter gods or the social media gods that it pops off, and the right people would probably see it and reach out to you. I think that's probably the best way to do it. If that doesn't work, or you could probably do it alongside what I'm about to tell you next, and that's just to be tenacious on LinkedIn. If you want to meet high paying, professional clients, you have to be in the professional sphere. You have to be on LinkedIn. You have to, again, I hate posting stuff on LinkedIn. I hate posting stuff anywhere, but you just have to, I mean, if you want to be seen, you have to be seen. You have to put it out there for people to see. Oh, I just activated Siri. That's annoying. You just have to put it in front of people, and then I feel like the right people you're supposed to work with would reach out to you. If it's meant, I'm a firm believer in, if it's meant to be, it will be. So just put it out there and just hope for the best. That's the most realistic advice I can probably give you. Be tenacious on LinkedIn. Also form the habit of reaching out to people that you want to work with. If you see an opening for a job that you feel you're a really good fit for, just send them a message. Be polite, be respectful of your time. Send them a message saying, oh, hey, obviously not hey, use more professional terms, but hi, reaching out to you. Actually have some information about them. Let them know that you've done some research, you've done some of the dirty work, and let them know why they should hire you. Give them all the best reasons why you'd be the best fit for that role. And that's what I did, and that's how I was able to get the position I'm in right now. And so cold emails work, cold messages work. You just have to be tenacious about. You have to also be ready for rejections, because there are gonna be a lot of rejections. So don't beat yourself up about it. I kind of mentally prepared myself for that, because like I told you, in my where I'm from, because of that trust issue, I believe it boils down to that trust issue. A lot of Nigerians get rejected very, very easily, or people, in Africa tend to get rejected a lot more than, elsewhere. So I was kind of seeing that on a daily basis. So it kind of mentally prepared me for, oh, okay, it's normal to get rejected. It's not a knock on your talent. It's not a knock on the kind of work you're capable of. I just believe, sometimes it's just not the right fit. I feel like the right person that's going to value the work you do is going to reach out to you, and you're going to work with them. So that's the way I saw it. So you have to mentally prepare yourself for that. Not everyone is going to appreciate your work. Design is so subjective. Art is so subjective. So someone might see and like it, someone might see and be like, yeah, this is not the guy for us. So you just have to be prepared for that. So I think those are my tidbits on getting started in the space.
Really interesting advice there, and you said loads of good things. When you answer, you always give like so many little useful things. So I feel like we need to recap that again. So, okay, be prepared for rejection. You're going to get rejected. You're going to get more no's than yeses, but the yeses that do come are meant to come. Like there's, it's kind of a numbers game when you start out, and if you don't have the contacts, and if you don't, necessarily have, I don't know, family and friends who can give you your first jobs, then, you know,
Mhm.
potentially you are going to need to be prepared for rejection, and also put yourself out there. Like you say, you know, put yourself out there on Twitter, post useful content for the people that you're trying to attract, and also make sure that you show your work. It sounds, I know this is like the most cliched design
Mhm.
designer like advice, but so
Mhm.
often people will just post the final product, or they won't, like, you know, they might not show anything other than just a website that they've worked on for months. And if you're literally just posting like the link and just hoping people will click, you know, make it easy for
Mm-mm.
people. Like, show off what you
Yeah.
can do and make it like
You need,
appealing, like
you need
a
to drip
video.
feed them.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and also, you know, it takes people a while to you know, have the confidence maybe and have the trust in you to choose you to employ. So, you know, you might not get a bite for months, years, and then someone
Mhm.
will reach out after seeing consistently your work on their feeds as well.
Mhm.
So yeah, I really, really second that advice. But I want to follow up on something that you said there as well. I mean, you talk about expect rejection. Now, this advice, you know, it's simple in, you know, it makes sense, but it's very, very
Mhm.
hard for people to actually have the kind of self-worth and self-respect to just accept that there are people for them and that there are people who will reject them. How did you
Mhm.
learn to just take rejection in the way that you have? Because you speak about it like, oh, it's really obvious you're going to get rejected, but actually some people might get rejected once and then be like, I'm done. So how did
Mhm.
you develop that character?
Um, I think it's just an idea of being realistic and true to yourself. You know, if you think you're the shit, yeah, okay, yeah, my work is so good, I'm never getting rejected. I mean, I was kind of feeling that way. Honestly speaking, I was kind of feeling that way when I was done. I was like, oh yeah, I spent all this time. You know, I'm not gonna. I was still getting rejection. So you know, it brings you, you know, off the pedestal. It brings you back to earth, and it just shows you that, you know, you're not everybody's cup of tea. You know, your work, like I said, it's design is so subjective. And then I also realized that the way some of these systems work, it's sometimes they're not even viewing your work. It just goes into an automated system, and then it just rejects them for you. So they might have found their person and then, oh, okay, just reject everyone else. So they probably haven't even gotten to you. You know, the way the space is right now, there are a lot of people that think design is, you know, easy. It's the easiest way into tech, so they kind of get ahead of themselves. They just jump at every single role, and then, you know, it kind of makes it a lot harder for people who are actually, you know, putting in the work, and then they're just getting, you know, swept out by the system with like everyone else. So it's also, you know, kind of the algorithm, the way the system works. So that's also a way of thinking about how you might get rejected as well. So it's not necessarily down to your work being bad. It's just, you know, the way the system is. You know, some people have, you know, a system where they just screen out, oh, people from, you know, a certain country, or people from, you know, who have less than 2 years experience, you know, stuff like that. So um at the same time, if you I actually don't want to give this advice. I feel like you should apply, you know, regardless. I wanted to say that you shouldn't apply if you don't meet the criteria, but then it's sometimes it's just about selling yourself. You might not meet the criteria, but if what they see is good enough, then you might as well, you know. So, but I mean, if it's not realistic, like if they're asking for 7 years experience and then you just started, you have no business applying for that role, you know, you just end up wasting people's time. So I feel like if you feel like you're a close enough fit, you should just go for it. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's my advice.
Yeah, and I think also, like, you become more and more accustomed. You can become more and more comfortable with rejection the more rejections you have. So,
Hmm.
like, if you get rejected once, go and get rejected again. Go and get
Hmm.
rejected 100 times, and then
Hmm.
you know, you won't even blink if someone just says no to you. And I think there is an element of yeah, just doing it enough will develop the character you need to accept rejection and
Hmm.
carry on with your life without getting too upset about it.
Mhm.
But yeah, really, really powerful advice there. So thanks for sharing that. Let's
Yeah,
talk about
welcome.
failure number 2 now then.
Hmm.
Taking on too many projects at the same time,
Yes.
dealing with multiple deadlines. Talk to me about that.
That's what I'm currently going through right now. Um yeah, it's a thing. It's a thing that people might not think of, but it really boils down to, thinking or finding it hard to say no to clients, especially when you're just starting out, because I don't feel like a veteran in the space. I don't feel like, even though I've been designing for so long, I feel like it changes so quickly and so rapidly. There's so many different things. I mean, now there's AI, so now I have to learn AI. I have to learn how to use Chat GPT. I have to learn how to use Mid Journey. So it's always evolving. So you can't be in one place. So I feel like, you have to evolve with the space. So that I don't necessarily feel like, oh, I have everything figured out. I know how to do everything. But I digress. Taking on too many clients, it happened to me recently because I felt like, oh, I was finding it really hard to say no to people. I felt like, oh, okay, I could probably just slot this in my weekend, or I could do this, here and there. I could touch it at least like 5 times a week, between Monday to Friday. So I had a scheduling problem, which was an afterthought to, after taking on the client. I just quickly realized that, oh, these deadlines are kind of clashing. So how do I go about that? So the ultimate compromise is your time. So this was during the Christmas break. Most of the time when I'm supposed to be spending my time, enjoying Christmas and spending time with family, I was at home working. So that was the compromise. So yeah, I think biting off more than you can chew is a thing that happens in design. I don't think I'm the only one that's guilty of that. I think that's happened to the best of us. So I'd probably advise against that, because the truth is, once I'm done with this slate of projects, I am taking a break because I need a break. It's a healthy thing to do. Just take a breather. Regroup when you feel like, okay, I've had enough time to myself. I probably want to get out there again. You probably, that's probably the best thing to do. But yeah, just to touch on that as well, dealing with clients. So as much as, having that very, expansive slate, dealing with those clients, when you have these close deadlines, is a thing in itself. I had an experience with a client where they had a strict deadline, and given the time that I was going to be free to work on the project, I gave them a timeline, in accordance to that deadline. And then it worked in such a way that 2 to 3 weeks before the project was meant to go live, they really hadn't seen anything, develop, because I was kind of working in the background. And then I knew that I was going to have a week where I was going to be free to, like, properly dive in. And then, we had these issues where, oh, it's been 2 weeks, haven't seen anything. I'm like, it's in the timeline. I gave you the timeline. I knew I was going to be free this week. That's why I gave you the timeline. So, dealing with stuff like that it's a pain. People can be a pain, but I try as much as possible to be as transparent as possible with, the clients that I work with. If it's not going to be possible in a month, in 3 weeks, in 2 months, I'm going to let you know. And, you know, that's just how I work. So, and then I work according to, the timelines we have. So we have to be accountable for ourselves as well. If you're not working according to the timeline, it's going to be a knock on your reputation as well. So I take that quite seriously. And yeah, it's just been a crazy couple of months. That's pretty much how I can sum it up. But
Okay,
yeah.
cool. So, I mean, it sounds like there's a lot of different advice there. One, check on clashing deadlines before accepting
Mhm,
projects. That sounds like a
mhm.
big one. The second one I think is important maybe to talk about is that, like, when clients have ambitious deadlines, sometimes all it takes is just to ask why. Like, and then you might have more room to play with than they say initially. As if they're like, hey, we need this done in a month, or we need this done in a week, or whatever it is. If you just say why, like, because then it might just be like a deadline that's completely arbitrary, and it means that they're putting tons of stress on you, which they don't actually need to. Like, if they say why, and then you say, well, do you have the content? Because if we're going to do this, I need stuff.
Everything.
I need everything. And then they're like, yes, we want to launch this video course in 1 week time. Can you do it? And you're just like, have you recorded the video content for this? Because I've had this scenario recently, and it's like, oh no, we actually haven't recorded the video content. It's like, well, let's focus on first things first. Why don't we think about it? So I'd also recommend pushing back on the client, or not pushing back, but just saying, hey, like, that's a very ambitious deadline. Why is that such an ambitious deadline?
Just to quickly chime in, it's crazy because I had a client that, was really pressing me on the schedule we had, and they were pushing for an early January launch. The crazy thing is we've gotten the project to, I'd say, about 80%, and now I haven't heard from them in weeks. So why was all that pressure being put on me at that time if we're nowhere near the launch because of pending stuff on your end? Do you get what I mean? So it's, I agree with the pushback thing, because at the same time, not pushback, I don't want to use that word because you're dancing around that word as well, but just letting them know, or kind of educating them on how these things kind of work and how best to approach that kind of project and getting the best results. Because I believe ultimately the result is what really matters. How we get there, it's like no one gives fuck all about all that back end stuff. So it's really the end product, how we got there. That's the most important thing. That's the way I see it.
And advice for any freelancers that are like dealing with multiple deadlines, how many projects is too many projects? I know that's very subjective depending on how quickly you work and maybe how big the tasks are, but do you take on generally like 2 website projects at a go, or are you dealing with more than that, or kind of how are you approaching freelancing?
So the truth is, I have a day job where I do mostly Webflow stuff. So I believe that's kind of helped me build a lot faster, which has definitely helped with freelance stuff as well. So I do freelance in my off hours and on the weekends. So I generally schedule, meetings during that time. I schedule the way I'm going to work on those projects. So dealing with those multiple deadlines, it really comes down to how well you plan your time. So you just need to have a proper schedule for, I want to work on website A, this weekend. I want to be able to get all these things done. I want to be able to do the different sections. I wanted to be able to do the cookie content. I want to be able to do all of that this weekend. So, just having a proper schedule, that's really what's going to save you from, the headaches of dealing with clients saying, oh, where's my website? Oh, why is this not working? It's just having a proper schedule. I think that's the only solution to that kind of problem, because if you keep dancing around it, freestyling your way through it, it's just going to become a mess. I've been in those situations in the past. It can be a mess.
And also, like, being transparent with the clients that you're working with, if both of you know what the deadline is, and I'd recommend building in some buffer as well. Like, if you can say, oh, this is going to take 5 weeks, and if you think you can get it done in 4, then that's going to look better. But if you
definitely
build in that buffer if possible.
So sometimes there's also a trick that if you get this done too quickly, it reduces the quality of the work. So they feel, oh, we paid you this much and you did it in a week. Do you get what I mean? So sometimes you might have that lead time. You might have oh, a week to do it, but you can get it done in 2 days, I'm still going to take the whole week to do it because I don't want any pushback on how long it took me to do it. Do you get what I mean?
Mm.
So it's yeah, I mean, obviously you can do that, you can afford to do that if it's still within your budget, if it's still within the time frame. But it's, you know, working with clients, it's obviously going to prepare you for the worst. You're going to have good clients, you're going to have bad clients. It's inevitable. I don't believe every client you can't see everything at face, but you can't take everything at face value. Some clients might be very pleasant in the beginning, but then halfway through the project, you're like, yeah, I should not have taken this on. But depending on your design philosophies, you might decide to terminate the project, which I never really do. I just always find a way to see it through. So yeah, I mean, it's all about your philosophy. Like I said, as a designer, you need to know when to, when you feel like you should call it quits, which I don't believe anyone should do. I'm a firm believer in, let's hold our hands, let's work on this thing till we're both happy, and then take it from there. So that's pretty much how I see it.
Great advice. Let's talk about failure number 3, underpricing.
Mm, mm, mm,
Mm,
mm.
mm, mm.
um Underpricing, I feel like as a designer I've pretty much underpriced my entire career. But that comes from a place of seeing the bigger picture. So let me kind of break that down. If you're starting out, obviously you can't charge your desired prices. You obviously have to, you know, be competitive. There's so much competition in the design space. So you have to price yourself competitively to be able to, oh, I can get this done for X amount, but this guy can do it for a lesser amount and he's not bad. I mean, I've seen his work, he's not bad. So, if you're starting out, I would advise to, just get your foot in the door. Just, kind of test the waters, test how it's like to work with clients. You actually want to get clients. So, if they're pricing you bad, you might just have to stomach it for, the time being, you know. But then obviously as you progress through your career and you get to certain stages in your career, you feel like, and you're confident in your work, you feel like, oh, okay, I've gotten to this stage, I feel like I should be charging more. Never compromise on that. When you feel like, you've established yourself, you've put in the work, you've invested properly in, whether it's your tech, it's your gear, it's your time, you've invested in courses, you feel like, oh, okay, I can take that next step. Definitely charge what you feel you're worth and do not compromise on that, because if you kind of undercharge at that stage, you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot, because clients have, you know expectations. So, if they're paying, people generally just want to get their money's worth. Even if they're paying, $100 or $500, they're like, okay, I'm spending this money, you know but then again, it depends on the client. There are people who don't care. They're like, oh, okay, there's this joke about the $50,000 clients and the $500 clients. $500 clients wanting the moon and stars, and, the $50,000 client not giving a shit. They just want to get the work done. So obviously everybody wants the higher paying client, that doesn't give a shit. But that's in a world with unicorns and whatnot. It doesn't happen all the time. So I feel like when you've established yourself, professionally, you should definitely charge what you're worth, what you feel like you're worth. And you know I gave you that story about where I was working, mid 2021, where I seriously undercharged myself, and I I knew I was undercharging myself, but then it was the opportunities I knew this was gonna, and the doors I knew was gonna open for me were well worth, taking on that hit financially. So working there, I got to meet different people. you know, got to connect with other professionals in the space. So, you know, it was just that the platform in itself was going to give me a lot more than, you know, whatever the monetary value was going to be. So I feel like those are the, you know, rare instances where you can, you know, take the hit and then you probably stand to gain more in the long run. You know, so you know you're thinking more long term than, you know, what you can just gain now. So that's what I was referring to when I gave you that example. So yeah, I mean, when you're starting out, just, you know, get your foot in the door. That's the way I see it. And then, you know, move up from there. So, you know, you can't just start, oh, you know, I started learning Figma today, I started learning Webflow today, and then I want to charge $10,000 for a website. It's not gonna work that way. You need to, you know, progress, you know, in stages. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, I think there's this kind of like fetishization of 10K clients, and it takes years to get the confidence,
Mm-hmm.
confidence, skill set, network to get to that stage.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, really, really important to start wherever you start, and things are going to move up from there the longer you do it. Really, I don't think it's any
Mm-hmm.
more complicated than that, really.
Mm-hmm.
Big,
Yeah, for sure.
powerful advice there. I like the way that you said, though, that, you know, if you're thinking about long-term opportunities, there might be opportunities that come, or for example, like a friend of mine wanted to set up like a clothing brand. This is like when I was like right at the start of freelancing, and he was like, I've got like 500 quid. And I was like, okay, then, well, this is going to be so much work, but let's just do it.
Mm-hmm.
But that
Mm-hmm.
was, I was looking at this like a portfolio piece with
Mm-hmm.
my mate that I really enjoyed like hanging out with, obviously. So I enjoyed working
Mm-hmm.
with him. And, you know, if you think of it from the point of view of like, this could be marketing material for me to actually get paid clients,
Mm-hmm.
then, you know, in the end, I think it was worth it from that perspective. So
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
I think it's important to think like, hey, you know, maybe this job isn't the best paid, but what can it give me? What can I learn from? What kind of networking circles does this put me
Mm-hmm.
in the context of choosing clients? So we've talked about a hell of a lot here, but let's wrap up
Mm-hmm.
this episode by a more difficult question. What is your next
Hmm.
failure going to be?
Hmm. What's my next failure to be going to be? You know, culturally, these kind of questions, we kind of shun, you know, stuff like this, you know, like, because people we're generally just a lot more positive and thinking, oh, okay, you know, it's all up from here, but obviously life isn't like that. My next failure, I guess, would be if 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 I end off the year, you know, the same way I started, I guess I'd consider that a failure. So not achieving, you know, the goals that I've set throughout the year for myself and how I plan to establish myself professionally. During our break, I'm sure you checked out my YouTube channel. I definitely want to get back on that. You know, there's so many things I want to do. You know, I feel like, you know, I'm in a place right now where I can dabble into these things. So which is amazing, because it's one thing to do something from a place of hunger, and then it's one thing to do something you love from a place of, oh, okay, I can do this now. Like I'm not thinking about, you know, so many different things. So those are my goals this year. That's what I want to achieve this year. So if I'm not able to cross off at least two, three, four things off that list, then I'll consider that a failure. Not necessarily a failure, but, you know, just shortcomings, not, you know, achieving set goals. And I mean, not everything is going to be achievable, but, you know, all we can do is try, really.
Love that. Love that positive twist at the end there. And if anyone wants to ask you anything about the episode or follow up with anything that you've said, should they contact you on Twitter? And if so, what's your handle?
Yeah, so my handle, it's on screen, it's Dumeme Arts. I think that's my handle on pretty much all socials. So yeah, definitely reach out to me. I'm pretty open. I think my DMs are open. Just reach out to me if you have any questions, thoughts. I don't know. If you want to be friends, you know, if you want to invite me to any communities, I see that you're pushing heavily on the WEBFLOW London meetup. I really wish I could make that. You know, so those are the kind of things I want to be involved in more this year. So
maybe there can be a Lagos meetup. Maybe
I'd love that.
Hey,
I'd
maybe
love
you're
that.
the guy.
I'd love.
Maybe you're the man.
Yeah, I'd definitely look into it. The thought has crossed my mind. When I saw that, I was like, should definitely do something like this in Lagos. I'm sure, you know, the turnout will probably be more than what I'm expecting, you know.
Hey,
so, yeah.
Do it. If you want to have a chat about like, yeah, any thoughts on like setting things up. Not that I am an expert. Any stretch of the imagination.
I mean, we're all just learning this shit anyways. So
yeah, we'll just make it up. That's what life is all about. Do you have any final words for anyone before we end the stream?
Final words. Just keep working, man. Just put your head down, block out the noise. There's so much noise. Like there's so much noise. You know, just block out the noise, block out the distractions, all the social media glam, none of that shit is real. You know, just think about where you want to be, think about your happiness, and just focus on that. Do what makes you happy. That's all I'm out. That's the energy I'm on. You know, that's all I'm about.
Epic. Love that advice. Well, thank you so much for coming, WEBFLOW. Thank you for sharing some vulnerable nuggets with us. And I'm excited to come to your Lagos meetup.
That would be amazing. Thank you for having me. It's nice to get out of my comfort zone. You know, stuff like this makes me nervous, but you know, still have to get it done. I feel like, you know, happy with what we've been able to talk about, and I hope people can, you know, get some nuggets of wisdom from, you know, this episode. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Hey, for sure. Thanks so much. See you guys next week for episode 29 of WEBFLOW. God, we're getting to 30. It's a big one.
The big 3-0.
Yeah, big 3-0. That's the drop off on most podcasts. So making it. Cheers, guys. Bye.
All right.